day that I never thought would happen, and I may regret. But I am here with the cast of Enterprise. And the last time that we were in such a concentrated area together was the read-through of the pilot.
Really?
On the Paramount Net. We've been at some rap parties, but they were kind of coming and going. We've never actually sat together like this in, how long's it been? 13 years?
12 years.
12 years?
Well, I guess so.
12 long.
Crazy.
So yeah, it's pretty great. And the point of this reunion is to, let me see, I can't remember.
What's the point? Yeah, welcome to our world.
Could you go back and describe us more than
breaking out a
just
sweat.
the cast? Could you give us some more?
So he's
little
all
bit-
confused because he just did this with Voyager last week, and Deep Space Seven, whatever that show was called.
Don't call me Neelix.
So Damien, what's your fun?
At least he didn't call me Dominique.
That's coming.
So I have a list of questions here that I am curious about, but I think you guys should ask your own questions as well. And one of the things that I was curious about, all of my questions have a negative bent to them. Like, what did you hate about the show? What could I have done better? How did I up?
So you guys in the industry anymore?
You guys have got to kind of help me out here. But first of all, I'm going to kick it off with kind of this funny thing that's happening right now on the internet, where I think I made an offhanded remark about the show being on Netflix if people watched it enough, or made a campaign for the show to come back. And I was kind of blown away at the tidal wave. I don't know if anyone else has seen this.
I have.
Of reaction of fans wanting the show back. And I think the show is being looked at again after, how long? It's been off there for 10 years?
Yeah.
My God. And just even being in the...
Our math is horrible. It's horrible.
No.
2005.
We went off in
2005.
8 years?
Yeah, we went off
It's
in
been
2005.
off
We went off in 5.
Dominic
So
was
it's
referring
8
to the
years.
time we
This is
first
why we went off
met.
the air, incidentally.
It's been off for 7 years because my son is 7, and and Ariana was pregnant with Jasper when they pulled the plug on us. So amazing we ever shot anything, really.
Well, however long ago it was, the show, I remember when the show was canceled.
That can't be right. I'm only 38.
That's so old.
Oh, wow.
I think she said that.
Wow. She just waits and lies in the weeds and then
Brandon, you got to jump in, bud.
viper.
Kidding.
It's all right. Truth. Truth is painful.
Continue, Brandon.
Well, the show, I think, even being in London recently, some of us here were at a big London convention. There's a lot of renewed love for the show and new love for the show that is very encouraging to me, because I always loved the show myself. And if it came back, would you guys do it?
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It'll never happen.
Dr.
but-
Flock has had a rubberheadectomy, so he...
But I mean, I didn't mean. I actually meant nothing by that remark. But it did make me think. First of all, I don't know how you would recreate a show this expensive.
Can I not be dead?
We'd find a way to bring you back.
Wait a minute. No, I thought that's the caveat, that without Connor.
Yeah, well, we'll save a little money that way.
That hurt my
That's
feelings.
the only reason I do it.
Is his clone still alive by any chance?
Yeah. We're good.
He's dead.
We're good. Clone boy.
He doesn't know his lines either.
Oh, boy. Got vicious fast.
Oh, well, that's true.
Do you remember that first read-through?
Yeah.
What,
You wouldn't tell me
very
whether
first-
I should squawk or not. That's what I
Yeah.
remember about that. I kept asking you, should I squawk? Should
Well,
I not
first of
squawk?
all, when you came, I remember the casting process of this show so vividly, because it was the first Star Trek that I actually cast myself, and with Rick. And I remember when you came in to read and you did that little squawk, we knew you were the guy. And I don't remember debating the squawk. I remember everybody, you were always Captain Archer. By the way, I cannot talk the entire time.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. We're
finding out stuff.
Yeah, we had
You've
no
never
idea.
told
Go
us this
ahead.
before.
Well, no, you were always Archer, because we met. And so that we didn't read anybody or anything like that. We cast you the second you walked in the room.
Squawking.
I went through hell.
You went through hell because the studio, which was very meddlesome on this project, there was one other guy they liked as well, and they were kind of going for him, but Rick and I wanted you.
They wanted Carson Daly.
Yeah.
Are you? No, you lie.
Well, so, it was a choice like that. But we fought for Connor. Connor took it all the way. You were the last person cast off tape. You didn't even come in to read, and we never met you. we had a lot of trouble casting your role, and we cast you off.
You were gonna make it Latino, maybe, weren't you?
A Latino?
You thought.
No, it was always Hoshi. But
Luis Guzman was gonna play my part.
you were hard to cast, but when we finally found you, we knew you were the one. The females are always hard. We knew you were the guy the second you walked in the door.
I met you in Voyager. Do you remember that?
Yeah, what happened there?
I thought I was going to do a guest star for you guys. Rick, you were there, Rick was there. It went swimmingly well. I think I even rang the manager and went, yeah, we're doing Star Trek next week.
And that's why you didn't get it.
And then never heard from them again.
That's the kiss of death.
But we never forgot you.
No, well, Rick came up to me when we were shooting Shuttle Pod 1, 6 months into that first season, and told me that, you know, I had your photograph on my desk for 2 years. I went, that's a bit weird. No, I didn't.
And Anthony, same with you. You know, this was, we knew you were the one very quickly. This was a great casting experience and a great cast.
Why are the women so hard to cast? Is it because that most of the men, it's mostly men doing the casting?
Well, there are more men in the acting pool. And
No. I'm saying the guys that are making the decision are mostly men. Is that correct?
Well, maybe. Our casting director, Julie Lowry,
Yeah.
was a woman.
Right.
And she would agree with me that the women are hard to cast, at least in my experience, you know. And I'm not saying
You did a really good job.
Yes.
Oh, you're strikingly beautiful.
Anyway. So Scott, you asked something.
No. I think that's, you know, I think that the casting females in Star Trek is a challenge, and these were actually women that you got to see their faces. So.
Well, it's also an alien. There's an alien involved, and so it has to be someone who has. There's something kind of otherworldly about Jolene. There's got to be something.
Alien.
Something alien. I would love to I would love to bring this show back. It's obviously very much a long shot, but I have, and if for some reason in some alternate reality scenario, did I have to ask you what did you love most about the show, and what would you have done differently? Unless that's too generic a question.
I wouldn't have killed me.
Okay, let that go.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Can you somebody? 7 years, Connor.
I will speak first. I guess I'll answer your question. I felt extremely fortunate in the kind of things I got to do as Trip, and to kind of, well, for lack of a better way to put this, grow up a little bit in the business. And playing that guy, I really was able to, you know, he had a moral and a ethical fiber about him that was sometimes a struggle, but I felt like he was figuring it out as I was figuring it out, and I really appreciated the, you know, having enough rope to hang myself with in doing that.
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to kick off my. I want to know what you liked and what you regretted. I'm going to tell you what my one big regret about the show was, and it's probably. I've said it before, and that was the final episode of the show. And
Really?
Why didn't you like it?
Well, I want to apologize to you guys. It was the only time, by the way, that Scott and I, we had a great relationship on the show. I felt. Maybe.
I'm waiting to see where this goes before you respond.
You only got pissed off at me one time, and that was on the final episode, which was in a season 4, which I was not nearly as much involved in, and Rick and I kind of swooped in at the end and decided we would write the final episode and make it a Valentine to all of Star Trek. So narcissistic move to some degree. And it was diminishing to Enterprise. Enterprise deserved its own final episode. In my own mind, I rationalized, you guys had just had a big 3-part finale thing, and that was an Enterprise finale. And I regret it. You were pissed, and you were right to be pissed. He was very protective of the show. He's like, why is this happening? Do you remember this? You don't remember that phone call? Okay. Well, I'll never
Yeah,
forget it.
I do.
It's like being yelled at by the captain. So that's mine.
Hey, one yelling in 4 years, that's not so bad.
But other than that, I had a great.
No, you yelled at me a couple.
I yelled at you, but that was on
deservedly so.
kind of a daily basis.
I'll say the one thing that what I loved about the concept of the show that I would have loved to see go further is the idea that because we are the first ship, and this has always been my issue with Star Trek, because Star Trek imagines a perfectible man. The idea that somehow we were able to get to the point where we've set aside conflict and we've transcended our worst selves. And if you take that as a jumping off point for the franchise, which, you know, personally I've always had some problems with, as much as I love Star Trek, I would be interested in figuring out what that process is. And I thought one of the things we had available to us that maybe we could have done a little bit more with was get into the idea that not only do we not get along, but that there is a lot more friction, that there's overlapping dialogue, and some of it is just what you can't do sometimes on television. You know, it is the nature of having to have a clean track, etc. But some of the grit I would have liked to have seen us get at more. But I thought that was also one of the profound difficulties in trying to extend a franchise, to have to try and reach out and bring new people in without alienating the fan base. And I thought you guys did a great job at walking an incredibly difficult line.
We walked it too finely.
A little bit in the first season. I imagined, as you just described, that there would be a lot more interaction between us as the 7 cast
Do you remember
members.
that episode where it was an early episode where the transporter malfunctions and a guy comes back? To me, that was an instance where I kind of would have liked to have seen the guy with like half a head.
Right.
You know? But I think by the time...
I think he had a twig in his
He had a
head.
twig in his head.
He had a twig, yeah.
And I thought that was an instance where I thought, oh, I wish we would allow ourselves to have it be like the episode where they had those wonderful corpses hanging on the abandoned ship.
Dirtier.
Yeah, scary, you know? But I always wondered, my question to you is, how much did you feel you were constrained by a network saying, no, too far?
Well, listening to you now, I think the show, once the show was on the air, we could have gone, we should not have walked a fine line. We should have boldly stepped into the gritty world. That's a failing of mine. I think the show could have been more violent and more gritty and with more conflict. However, having said that, we did have constraints with the studio that you guys may not have been aware of. I don't know if you were, unless you watched the season 1 Enterprise Blu-ray available now.
That's available now.
But
I think we had to intuit that. I mean, none of us
I
are
think we
virgins,
felt a sense of that.
well, I mean, what
We
happened
all
with the
sensed
show?
it pretty soon. The episodes had, definite hallmarks all over them from stuff that we grew up with, and it was a Star Trek episode.
Well, the show originally, and Scott, I don't know, maybe the pilot had already been written when we talked to you. I think so. Yeah. Was supposed to be set on Earth. The show that Rick and I pitched to the studio was a show set on Earth. The Klingons attacked Earth. The same things, general things happened, but it was all about the building of the first starship and the getting to, the Vulcan thing was all there. It was about getting the crew together. It's about Archer putting a crew together to be the first people who went out. And it was either the end of the season or somewhere mid-season. The ship was going to be launched. So it was much more mud on the boots, gritty show set on Earth for the first large part of the season. So the launching of the ship was going to be a much bigger deal. All of these things. The studio said, "Are you out of your mind?
You're not in space.
You're not in space.
Right.
You should be in space." And they didn't even want to do a prequel. That's how this whole temporal Cold War thing came in. They wanted some futuristic element to be in the show. So we interwove that, so it was kind of a prequel and a sequel. So we did battle with them over just being able to do this concept from the beginning. So it's a miracle we even got it there. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, no, I mean, I think that's the most asked question that we get consistently is how did you feel about the last episode? I'm going back to what you were saying before, and and that was a challenging. I don't know. Who's ever happy with the last episodes? That's what I always say to people.
There have been some great ones.
My favorite Martian?
Well, but
Goes back to Mars. It's great.
Is that true?
I don't know. I'm making that up.
no, but very seldom. You're not going to get a consensus about that. But I mean, look, you can apologize for the last episode, and we can have disagreements about it. But to be totally honest, it's your guys' show. We had 4 years of fun and great work. We got to stay in town and work, which is ridiculously unusual. We had, for the most part, we were treated better than any other show almost that I've ever been on in terms of how we were dealt with. And we had great people to work with, not just the people in this room, but the people that came in and worked with us on a consistent basis. And I can bitch and moan about what you guys did on the last episode, but it's up to you guys. It's your baby.
I'm just saying it was. I thought it was a crappy episode.
I didn't
nothing
mind
else.
it, to be
Let's
honest.
shoot
I
it
certainly
again.
didn't mind the.
There we go.
Write
Let's
it. We'll
reshoot
just shoot that one
Oh,
episode.
by the way, that's a great idea.
That's it
That's
right
a
there.
that's a brilliant idea
new-
for the
new
Netflix
ending.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to say what I loved was that
thank you to you guys for pulling all of us together, because at the end of the day, if you hadn't done that, we would not be the family that we are regardless. And we all know that each series has their own family. We're
Anthony
all
sleeps in my guest house. Is this a good time to mention that?
nah,
Really
not
getting
anymore, not
tired of
anymore. I
it.
used to.
You kicked him out, huh?
Trying to.
But what we're doing, but what you guys did and bringing us together, regardless of how challenging it was, I've got 2 sisters and 4 brothers for the rest of my life, and whether we see each other or not, we're all a part of each other's lives for the rest of our lives.
It's
and
absolutely true.
And I thank you guys for that.
It's the best thing about doing this stuff is that we have a very unique bond. We did a Star Trek show together, you know.
Well, and the best, I mean, the other part of that is that you picked the perfect person, even in just what Scott said just now. You picked the perfect person to actually lead us, because all of us, Connor grew up in the industry on this show. I did as well. We all had a few things that we had done, but we all actually grew up on Enterprise.
Actually.
You had done a boatload.
I regressed.
Been a
But
steady
it's
fall
okay.
from that
It's
point
been a
forward.
steady
Hold on, I've
fall,
got a
but-
real moment. Shut
No,
up.
that was the zenith for
So,
me, and,
but
alright.
then you have somebody like Scott who has actually already been, who had been where we were all going, and to see him come in on a daily basis and give us the energy that he did, it started from the top and went all the way down. There was not one day that Scott ever got to set that he didn't say hello to the craft service person. Every single person, and
Any
that
new face on the bridge,
everybody,
any
and that
extra, any
energy was
stand-in.
infectious.
He was
So-
suspiciously warm with craft services, in fact. It's like, why is he buttering up the craft service people all the time?
I'm just watching Connor scrape those bagels out every day, that's all.
The captain, like what happens with the
Calorie
Great
conscious.
craze.
What happens with the Star Trek show, you're right. The guy playing the captain or lady playing the captain is the captain.
Yes.
In a funny way.
Yes.
And you have to lead and you have to set that tone.
God
and
bless
and you were the best at it, I must say.
All right, thank you. Moving on.
Okay, moving
All
on.
right.
Now, what I hated
I
the
want to hear
last
from the
episode.
ladies.
We-
We talked.
Jolene,
I've never said
I
that
have one
anywhere,
question
but
for Lynn,
yes,
one
I
for,
did not.
one for Jolene. Jolene, you're the most mysterious cast member to, I think, the fans, because you don't do a lot of these interviews. Am I correct?
That's right.
And I was just telling Scott, I was just telling you, I worried that you wouldn't do this. And if you hadn't, I would have suggested we call the whole thing off, because your character and your portrayal of the character was so integral to this show. You were kind of Archer's foil. Do you miss the show? Did you enjoy the show? We have never really talked all that much.
I did. I still, I feel like I could have done better, but it was a really magical moment, really. And I thank you, Scott, also for being such a character in my life.
You're welcome.
But you do have that gift. You are a great leader, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you fighting for us and trying to get us to where we needed to be. And I know that the odds were set against you, but I know you were always fighting for us.
I thought you were great as T'Pol. I really thought you brought something special to it. Were you happy with the way the character was written? Because there were times, I'm not sure you liked the whole thing with Trip. And you can be candid, because I've always wanted to ask you this.
I think, honestly, I was a little judgmental about it. I think we probably should have gone there. We never, see, the thing is we never really went there. We kind of touched on it, we played with it, but nothing really.
It was neither here nor there.
It was middle ground, so I didn't really know what was happening.
Yeah, no, that's a valid criticism. I talked to you a lot about scripts, and I talked sporadically to other people. I wish you and I had, that's another regret I have. I know I'm being very negative. I wish we talked more.
Did you ever think that the sexual subtext between me and Anthony Montgomery needed to be mined more? Because that was something that Anthony and I talked about a lot.
Listen, you guys do whatever you do on your own time.
No. It was purely about the work.
Montage
It was about. Is there?
Yeah.
That would have been a final episode.
Is there any slash fiction with me? Is there any slash fiction that I appear in at all? None.
You and I do the Charleston on YouTube.
It all played out with the dolls in the makeup trailer, I seem to
Yes,
remember.
I know. Oh, my doll got a lot of action on the show. The one episode I had a wife. She went after Connor.
This was your first day when you came to the Enterprise Bridge for the first time. That's your first time. You had done other stuff, correct? But this was your first big job?
Yeah, I mean,
You've done theater. I'm talking about television.
yeah, I think I had been in LA like 3 months. And I had done one day on, my first job was Jurassic Park. So I did one day. And then I did one day on Popular with Anthony.
Oh, you know what's so funny? That's the tape I saw. And it was so funny to me that she was doing a scene with you who had already been cast. And I'm like, well, this seemed like fate.
We did one episode
Yeah, and
together on Popular.
Yeah, and we were in the scene together. I was a racist shop girl.
She was a racist shopper, exactly.
Against
and my
Black Anthony.
Yes.
So what was it like?
My girlfriend on the show was white, Carly Pope. So we were dealing with that, high schoolers.
Oh, Carly Pope. I
Carly.
like her.
Yeah, she's cool.
Oh, we finally woke up.
Can you get me in touch with Carly?
But not for our show. She wasn't right for our show, okay?
But Linda, what was it like that first day? Well, your first day was on the bridge. You didn't know Star Trek all that much, did you?
No, I mean, I grew up watching Next Generation, you know, with, it's so funny because I feel like I know so many of those people now. It's like two different people. But I grew up watching that because it was very popular when I was in high school, Next Gen, right? So I knew, but I wasn't like, I don't think anybody was a Trekkie among us. Was there anybody who was a Trekkie?
John.
But you got to be like sleeping on.
I was of the original series, absolutely.
TOS.
Absolutely.
What do you mean? What's a Trekkie?
Somebody
Like
that
you've
knows-
watched
that
every
knows-
Star
that
Trek
watches
show, like
every
you have,
episode, that
like
can
a
tell
Star
you the
Wars, like
timeline,
a, you know?
No, we weren't.
That would have been weird.
To have that, you're like, I'm finally on Star Trek, my life dream, you know. But I think you have to be sleeping under a rock to not have awareness of Star Trek. I was scared. I mean, it was, I don't remember what the first day on set was. I think it was all just kind of a panic haze the first couple.
I remember your first day. I remember your first close-ups and being on the set and watching. You did a great job. You didn't seem scared. I was scared for you.
You remember
like,
the episode
"Please do
when
not
you had
leave me."
all of that alien gibberish? You were at the end of the episode.
Like which one?
It was the first one where we found the corpses hanging from the.
Yeah, the fight or flight, yeah.
And we had to reshoot that scene. Remember that? You
Because
had.
I got too emotional, we had to go back and reshoot that last
I
one.
just remember that you were given like a couple of days and you had to relearn all the gibberish for those who
Over
are
again.
watching is spelled out very specifically and accented, so you had, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and you got that to redo with a couple of days. I was so in awe of your ability to do that, being old and not being able to remember any lines, even in English.
No, we made up your alien
Denobulan.
language.
That was all scripted. I was always impressed that you guys were always able to.
Oh, write the alien language?
And then you'd have it's like you couldn't say, oh no.
That means something completely
Except
different.
unless like
Alien languages have their own rhythms.
That was the
Spacesuits.
thing we hated the most. The spacesuits.
No, we all didn't. You did. It wasn't that bad.
They were dreadful.
I hate them.
Why did you hate them?
And Dom hated
They
them.
weighed like 1,000 pounds.
And they were just strangely
They were,
set.
and we got better when
weight
Scott,
on your back.
Scott's guy Mark came in and sort of designed it somewhat, didn't he? But it was a long day in that suit.
They
man.
look gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I did like to come to the set when Dominic was wearing them, just on days
Yeah,
I had
that's
off.
always
Just
fun.
just to see what might happen. Remember
did
the
a lot of time
episode
in that
when
suit.
Dominic had to go outside on the hull?
Yes.
Minefield.
John
Yeah,
Scheiman.
yeah,
Yeah. I definitely showed up that day.
God, when
Dominic doesn't know, but we all actually, we would kick into a kitty when we were kind of mad at you, and we would give it to the guys to write an episode for you in the spacesuit. Time to put down
It was. You turn the page and go. They step out in their EV suits. You just. Every part of you would just go. Oh no.
You start to sweat
Oh
immediately.
no.
Star Trek conventions. Have you done one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did 3.
You did 3?
The last time I saw you, we were on stage in Germany together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a part of that's an inevitable part of becoming a Star Trek cast
It's the
member.
annuity. God bless.
True enough. Enjoy them? Memories? Linda, have you done one? You seem like the one, you and Jolene. The female cast members on this show, you guys are you're a little more...
They're the best, okay? Just start with that. They're the
well,
best.
no, they're a little more
best ever.
mysterious to me. So have you done one?
yeah. I've done a couple of them for sure.
She taught me how to tango on stage, didn't you?
We did. We tangoed together on
We
stage.
all did the big one in London.
I almost got my pants off, in fact, on stage, and my wife jumped up to stop me. I was auctioning off my clothes for charity. Remember that?
Not the first time.
In Germany.
I do remember
yeah.
that.
Yeah, we made you some money.
Oh, for charity.
For charity, yeah.
Charity.
Yeah, it was the John Billingsley
The Jim
Foundation.
Wright.
I remember that. Yeah, the hell of a foundation. They did great work.
I like them. I mean, I've done quite a few, and they're the first one is always interesting.
You were shy at first.
Yeah, because the first one I did was in Portland, Oregon, and I'm about to walk on stage. These big giant Klingon guys open the curtain for me, and out I go. Trial by fire, and but the truth of the matter is we wouldn't even be here if it weren't for those people who just continually came back, and kind of reintroduced everybody to Star Trek. And you're a member of you're a guest in their club.
Well, what's fascinating to me is it's almost
In their basement.
In their
and their
basement.
home.
and their basement.
I've done that
And their bodies.
True.
It's you know what it is, guys. It's a shared history.
Yeah.
To put it in the most illustrious light, you walk into. It struck me in London, and I was looking at these thousands of people, realizing we have it's a fictional history, but it's a shared history. Everybody in that room knows all the characters. They're all conversant in a very intricate, long-lived thing, and there's something kind of profound about that.
Sure, to go for an audition and to all of a sudden become a part of the global lexicon that's just surreal, honestly. All we wanted to do was work. That's it.
I wanted to be part of the global lexicon.
Yeah, well, but you are, but
Lucky you.
Whoosh, now I can retire.
It happened for you.
Part of the global lexicon.
Is there anything that you guys have ever wanted to ask each other or me or something, even if it's controversial? I'm trying to dig up some juice.
Do you like Rick Berman?
Do I like Rick Berman?
Yeah.
I love Rick Berman. I'll give you an honest answer. First of all, I think he should be here right now. So
Why is he not?
Why is he not here?
Roger tried to get a hold of him, and he's doing a tremendous amount of traveling. So he's probably scuba diving in Australia somewhere. That's what he's doing right nowadays. And so Roger was not able to get a hold of him. Rick was my best friend for many years. He's also kind of somewhat of a father figure to me, and I didn't have a dad growing up, so I had a complicated relationship with Rick, but it was generally good. But I would chafe under Rick sometimes. We were partners on this show, but not really. At the end of the day, I had.
We wondered sometimes.
I think, to be honest with you, when the show ended, my relationship with Rick became very complicated because I was eager to get out of
that shadow.
yeah.
What was since we have this opportunity, what was your favorite aspect of the show, and what were you most unhappy with?
Well, he said the finale. He was most
Other than the finale.
Well, but
in
that's
terms of a
one
macro.
specific thing. Look, it's always going to be, for me, because it's my job, I just think the show could have been better written out of the starting gate. I think the pilot was amazing, but I just don't like, the fact that, how many episodes did we do the first year?
26.
Okay. First of all, I don't know who can do that many hours of television.
Did you feel like the temporal time war was that a constraint for you guys?
To me, it was strangulating because I didn't want it in there. That was an idea for another TV show that I had that I put in. It seemed cool, but when the episodes came along, they made no sense. They were.
Yeah, and we're left answering the questions now.
Yeah, and that's
Explain
right.
the temporal Cold War. What happened to the temporal Cold War? Could you tell us that?
I'm pissed that guest actor got more to do on the show than I did.
Well, I hate to pick just one. Tell me when.
What were some of your favorite episodes?
I'm not lost! I know exactly where I'm going.
Oh my God, Jeffrey!
Pigskin trap! Retreat!
Jeffrey
Hi,
Combs.
Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Combs, ladies and gentlemen.
Making an entrance. There's no chair for you.
Yeah, you're
horribly late.
No, I'm not actually.
You're not?
All planned.
All planned?
Well, we can't get up, so you'll have to come and say goodbye.
How are you?
I thought she was kidding.
It's a pigskin trap.
See ya.
By the way, worth noting, my favorite episode, hands down, is Dear Doctor. And that's not just because it enlisted all the characters. It was a great ensemble piece. Everyone had a moment. It was a really interesting concept that built to a really great conflict.
Very controversial.
And it had it all. And it had an interesting framing device. To me, that was in the first year, that was Enterprise. It was also Enterprise dealing with a challenge that only could have been dealt with on our show. It couldn't have been on any of the shows. They were too far advanced. So to me, that was Enterprise firing on all cylinders.
If I can jump in and say one of the things that I loved about being part of the show, which I also felt could have gone further, is kind of this question about humanity, right? Like what it means to what the right decisions are, what the good, and in us going to space, kind of the social parallels, moral parallels, like political, and not for it to be like a moral story necessarily, but in a way to, yes, be grittier and be kind of being grittier than the other Star Treks, but more so still staying in tune with what that meant in the original Star Trek, to go boldly where no man has gone before. What is it to be a good person? Like, what is it kind of to elevate? And then what are the conflicts up against that?
Well, that's why that episode, Dear Doctor, works so well. And you do so many of these episodes, it's hard to find the perfect alchemy. It's hard to get all of those elements.
And hard for it to not become polemical. I mean,
it's never us trying to hit you over the head. I thought another great episode was a T'Pol episode.
Why couldn't we have been more polemic? I mean,
because you don't want to hit people over the head. I mean, it's about provoking a discussion.
You go back to the original series. Remember the Frank Gorshin where he's black and white? Now, some people love that episode, but for me, that's one of the most unwatchable of the original episodes because it was so on the nose. I mean, it was preposterously on the nose. Well, but that's to me what I think is you're at risk of. If you land it right there, I think you say, well, yeah, I don't treat it like I'm a dunderhead. I
suppose, but I guess the point of that one was there's no gray area. It was either black or it was white. That was sort of the whole concept.
I think in the context of the era, perhaps it wasn't perceived as being quite as on the nose, and some of that is just looking at it from a distant.
Yeah, but you know what? Look, you guys are still debating it, and that's the whole point. Another episode.
He's debating it. I'm just saying what I
like.
No, you're right.
AIDS allegory. Is that what you were going to come to?
The episode Stigma.
Yeah.
The AIDS allegory, I thought was an excellent.
But didn't you want to write that 15 years before you finally got to air it?
Yeah, we wanted
and they
to.
wouldn't touch it because it was all too polemic.
Yep. Well, it was.
Well, like Cogenitor. I mean, that to me was an instance where it touches on a lot. It touches on, to me, what that got at was a lot of the question of to what extent do we and can we judge, for instance, Middle Eastern societies. How do we respond to a woman in a burqa? How do we respond to a woman in a society where she doesn't, by our lights, have her full civil rights? But it was done in a way that didn't, to me, raise the flag so obviously.
It was beautifully done. I thought it was the best episode.
That was one of my very favorites.
Yeah. Great one.
Yeah, I agree. That was the trisexual thing, the third gender.
Third gender,
Yes.
Right.
being a part of the mating process.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny. It was a novel idea. I think Rick and I wrote that one.
Yeah.
And we just
LeVar directed it.
It turned into something better. And I'm
Connor
not
was
just saying
awesome.
this. It didn't seem like, wow, this is a great episode on paper. But, I, like the audience, when dailies would come in, would watch the show like anyone else.
I think this
I would
cast
watch it come
elevated
to
a
life.
lot of the scripts, really, when I think about
Probably
it.
about 99% of it.
We did the best we could, darling, under very difficult circumstances.
Did you guys have a lot of? Because now you've got. There are a lot of questions I had. Did you have a lot of pressure on you to work with a specific pool of directors? Did you ever feel like you wanted to expand that pool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Because I wondered sometimes, and this is not in any way a reference to any of the directors we had, who I thought were all lovely, but I wondered sometimes whether or not there would have been merit or value in bringing people from outside the Star Trek world who've never directed Star Trek before.
We did
it
and
a
we
few
did.
times.
There were a few.
We
There were a
did,
few.
you know, and you know, it's funny
I
because
remember David Straighton got his first stripes on
and
that,
some would
James
succeed and
Whitmore Jr. did
yeah,
one, right?
some would succeed and some wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with writers and actors. You know, there's a certain something
What
that you have to.
what did you think was the sort of X factor?
Understanding the essence of Star Trek, understanding that it's a period piece that takes place in the future, and that people aren't. They're contemporary, but they're not.
Naturalism.
It's got to be naturalistic, but not too natural. It's just a certain pace. It's a certain something, and you know.
It has a theatricality to it, you know.
A little bit.
A la Shakespeare, if you will. Or,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I got to tell you, you know, the directing on Star Trek. This show was kind of its own thing after a while. I mean, you know, you guys need Let me ask you: did you feel you needed a director to help you with scenes? I mean, I'm honestly asking.
No, it was more technical.
I would have.
Technical.
I would say somewhat differently that to me, one thing I always miss as a TV actor, I love it when a director doesn't get in my grill, but actually challenges me to look at the performance.
Especially if you're doing it day after day.
It very, very rarely happens in
But that doesn't
TV.
happen
It's so
very
much of
often.
it is about, you know,
The mechanics.
that when it happens, sometimes I think, you know, you do a lot of television, sometimes what happens as an actor is you sort of bridle. But if you can get past that and actually accept the fact that it's kind of a rare and wonderful thing to have somebody ask you to question. I like that in direction, and I don't get it very often.
Well, you know what? And I think your point about directing, we did tend to go to a certain pool. I did try to mix it up. It wasn't always easy finding people who wanted to direct Star Trek.
What?
You know.
What?
You answer that.
Well, I'm
Scott.
sure amongst the sort of A-list of, you know, TV directors, yeah.
It's like,
I'm sure you had trouble sometimes getting actors.
and writers. And writers.
Oh, I don't want to.
How many did you direct, Scott?
The same amount as John.
Directing from within.
Didn't you direct one at
No,
least?
I didn't.
Did you want to?
Yeah, did you want to?
No.
Would you have if it had gone another few years?
Maybe.
He had two small boys at home.
And
keeping him
why
up
did
all
you
night,
not
I
want
remember
to?
that.
You know, it was a
Big responsibility for you. You had to sort of
I've done-
concentrate on what you were.
Yeah, I've done it before. There's so many components to this, you know, beyond just a regular episode. There's so many elements. The design of the episode, which I think a director should be a part of, and there's so much stuff outside of it. The effects of the episode, all of the things that you'd want to be up on, while you're still shooting other episodes, and then you want to be involved in casting. I've done this before.
It's
so I know.
before and it's after.
Before
that
and
you-
after. It's not just
We
the-
would have
it's
had
not
to
just the
we would have
during
had to almost write you out of.
Yeah.
I've done it when I've been, you know, I was the guy.
You did
in the
Quantum?
episode, you know, but
But during prep, I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you're saying to prep an episode and take you out of, you're the captain. You
you're
can't
not
just.
just prepping scenes. You're prepping a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, and you need to be there for 10 days before the episode shoots on a daily basis all day. You'd be prepping from your trailer.
Yeah,
And it's
which
hard
I-
to do.
Done it on the weekends, done it at lunch, done it before and after, but it's just not, you know.
I got to say, knowing as we all do, a bunch of the guys, you know, Robbie Duncan, McNeil, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know, to a man, every one of them is always very gracious in saying thank you for letting people learn. I mean, you've done a lot, I think, you know, not just to kiss ass, but to bring a lot of people into directing careers, and that's
Directing on a lot of other shows.
a lot of the shows. Boy,
Roxanne has become a force in the industry now.
Yeah, she's doing great.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Can I go back to something? Because we're talking second season. And I think this, to me, with the second season was pivotal in that halfway through the second season, the course for the next 2.5 years was determined. Because you guys, I don't know if you remember, but you guys brought me into your office in the middle of the second season and said, we feel the show has to go a different way. And all the things that we've not been negative about, but kind of talking about the challenges. I think the first season was a challenge, tremendous challenge for me, in terms of everything I didn't really want to be a part of. We were writing these kind of little
episodes that I felt like I could have been on any of the previous 4 franchises. Guys go on land on a planet, the cave's got
Figure
some
it
gas,
out.
everybody's going crazy, we can't get in, the storm blows in, and we're out, you know. And
I'm with you.
I was like, okay, I've seen that, it's just with us now.
Yeah.
And we have hats in the dog, you know? So, but midway through that second season, which was when you guys said we're going to turn and we're going to address from the Star Trek world what happened in 9/11. So the show gradually got more gritty, got more real. Listen, when the first episode, I was told that the Star Trek captains don't bleed, and I said, well, that's just I don't even know how to respond to that.
Who told you that?
Producers, not you, but on the set, and we were having the first fight in one of the, in the pilot, and they were like, well, and I said, well, we got to have well, shirts don't get ripped, things don't get, and then you look, and I was like, hold on, I can't do that. I don't even know how to respond to that. Wow. And you look at that conversation from the pilot to where the guy, my character ended up, and everybody else ended up in season 3 and 4, and you guys changed the course of the show. And I think consistently people say the last 2 years were incredible. Yes. And the show really started picking up, and nobody wanted the show to end because we were starting to get grittier. We were starting to explore, because of you guys and other people, we were exploring what it was like to be,
what it's like to be different, to be the outcast, to be
the things that you were talking about earlier, John. We were starting to get there. I don't know where we would have gone if people. What would have happened if you'd continued? But I know that that was a pivotal moment for the next 2.5 seasons that you guys came up with and chatted with me about. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. And we were in trouble. I think we were in trouble. We had some great episodes, some of which we've mentioned. But because we were kind of walking what someone called this fine line, which was bull, quite frankly, and I'm not blaming the studio completely. I will blame them a lot for not letting us go all the way, which kind of forced us into, because they wanted a standalone weekly episode on a ship. It gets hard to do 26 episodes that fully exploit the potential of the show. And by the middle of the second season, it was like, let's either stop or let's do something radical. And the idea of doing an entire season that was serialized today in television is very typical.
By 24 at the time, wasn't it?
It was. It's 24 was doing it. They were the only one doing it. And of course, there was resistance to doing something like that. But it's just what the doctor ordered for season 3. I thought season 3 was the first time I was actually enjoying writing every single episode. It was, and I think it showed on screen.
But that shift started in season 2, though. You look at the second half of season 2, and when I talk about our whole show, we had 2.5 years of the 4 that were
and season 4, I always thought
basis.
Something you just said. I always thought season 4 should have been season 1.
Yes.
And to be honest, that was really Manny Cotto coming in, who took over the show in season 4, and his sensibilities were more right for the show that I co-created. As odd as that sounds.
There's also just an element of, you're off the hook, because I think
we
all knew that we weren't going to come back after that 4th year. I mean, we all knew that, and there's liberation there. When you are starting off with a new show and you're having to answer to a lot of suits who care passionately, right or wrong, it's a lot easier when they, say, oh well, c'est la guerre. I mean, there was a freedom.
They were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were not at the studio anymore.
That's right.
That was a regime change.
The real reality.
Yeah. And the regime that came in, I think they were like, what have we inherited?
They didn't even know.
No, the new lot at UPN, you mean? Yeah, I know.
No, at Paramount. Everybody was gone.
Yeah.
If you could have it live anywhere, Brandon, now, where would you have it live? Like in your fantasy world, right? We're just saying, where would it live?
The show, creatively.
Yeah, network-wise or channel-wise.
Well, first of all, creatively it would be, I think, had the show continued, you would have gotten more of season 4. Manny had amazing plans. Shran was. We talked about bringing Jeffrey's character on as a full-time character.
I'd heard that.
It's a terrible thing to tell you.
That helps now. doesn't it?
That's well, look, you were a great foil for Archer, and you guys, your dynamic was terrific, and we thought that would be good to bring in maybe full time to the show. But Scott, I appreciate you saying that because it was my experience as well when that happened.
And look.
And by the way, there were a lot of changes going on.
I know.
In the studio, we kind of were able to slip it through the cracks. You know?
Yeah, I know. It was a tumultuous time, and I don't by any way mean to run down the first season. Except I think you guys listen. I'm the one who fought, and you guys can all blame me. But I just said this 26 episodes a year is stupid.
Did you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I said this is because if you recall, we were airing shows, two new shows on the same night. And I said, what the hell is that all about?
And the repeat on the Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
And it was like, you have too much product. You don't have room to air it, and you guys are exhausted. We should not have come on right on the heels of Voyager. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
In a perfect world. But I know what the world was. The world was we have to launch UPN. We have to hold up UPN. But it was, in a perfect world, if we could have waited and let the smoke settle, and let you guys all relax, rest.
Well, and you go back in time in the years in which Voyager overlapped with Deep Space overlapped with Next Gen. I mean,
Well, certainly a sense of having gone to the well quite as prolifically as you had.
If Rick were here, he would tell you he fought tooth and nail not to get put a new Star Trek show on. He says the goose is already hobbling, the golden goose. You're gonna kill it. But they were like, okay, well, if you don't do it, we'll find someone who will.
Sure.
There's nothing that could be done about it.
So I've got a question.
It didn't work out completely horribly.
No, I'm not saying it's bad.
No.
I'm just saying I knew.
And by the way, the whole point of what we're doing right now is that the show is amazing. The show is watching the Blu-ray of season 1. First of all, I don't remember any. I'm watching these episodes. I'm like, what's going to happen next? But what were you going to say?
No, because I feel like we really worked our butts off and we do have a quality series. This is a question I've been asked for the last, doing every convention I've done. Why was Enterprise canceled?
The network.
Because they said what I was told is that our ratings weren't what they needed to be. The fans needed a break, but we still had the highest ratings on UPN, so we were still bringing in the numbers.
What's so fascinating to me is like thinking about there are things that I cannot answer when I'm on stage. That only you guys could answer about the making of the show, which people want to know about all the time. And there are things that you guys can't answer about decisions that were being made in the offices. Why do you think we were canceled?
I want to say one thing before we leave this other thing. I do believe that because, and with all, I would say this, I'm saying this with you in the room, but that this group of actors stayed determined for 4 years and continued to grow and to learn and to push everything that they were given to do. And I think that accumulation of that, and it sounds stupid, but that kind of goodwill, grew, and that affected the audience. So when you see people that are like discovering the show now, they're like, man, that show, and you and I did talk about this from the beginning. You're the first person who said, people are going to appreciate this show years from now. They don't get it now, but they're going to appreciate it. And I find that consistently everywhere I talk to people, and they're like, great. They'll say, oh my God. It's like, and I really want to say to everybody, where were you when we were floundering, basically?
They didn't watch it.
They weren't watching it.
They were watching reruns of Voyager.
Whatever they were doing, they weren't watching it. But we persevered with the material, and the material, in my opinion, got better and better, and so did we. Yeah. And I think that the show, and that's where the legs of the show and the legacy of the show is, because I think it's irrevocably connected to 9/11. And
we premiered 2 weeks after that?
2 weeks
or so, yeah. And the spirit and the sense of everybody on this planet, certainly in the United States, but all across the planet changed because of that event. And we were able to manifest that by about a year and a half into the show and let that out. And in a very unique sense of science fiction and what Star Trek has to offer.
In a controversial way.
Examining now in the future.
Yeah, and people now, everybody has a little space from 9/11, and they can look at it and And I think there's a great
Was
appreciation.
suspense
But we stayed true to the course. Everybody in this room stayed true.
It's also, there's something that people don't necessarily, I mean, I think even actors don't always understand it, is that when we begin to know each other and trust each other, we begin to take more risks as actors working with each other. It's hard for a show, I think, to really have its sea legs right away. You know, you don't necessarily know who you're working with, or what their temperament is, or how they're going to take a risk you might want to take as an actor. You know, I think that this was a group of people that, as we got to know each other and began to feel more comfortable playing and being playful, we found more latitude with each other.
God bless Scott, because you set a tone right from day one that was very nurturing and generous.
The reason I'm in this business from day one and still to this day is the relationships you get that we develop and the time that we have together. And I said this to everybody while we were making the show. And you guys do your thing, and the tech people do their thing, and we all, but our time together is all that we have. That's what we carry forward. But we were also the most human of any of the other shows, with maybe exception of the first. So we didn't have a lot of stuff to hide behind. You're the only person. You had, ears, but basically you didn't get all the bull that Spock had. You had a lot more. You were caught in a very strange place.
Do you remember we went to a convention in San Antonio? It was the first convention you and I went to. Nobody showed up. We found out it's because the local UPN affiliate wasn't showing Enterprise on a regular basis. They would preempt it for local football games, and that's some of what happens. Looping back up why we were canceled, it's a complicated answer, but that is part of it. We weren't being shown. We weren't being shown. We were being moved around on the schedule.
Brandon, was it also the dynamics of the industry and all of a sudden Star Trek, new regime? This is really expensive to make. You've got 3 sound stages. You've got
that too.
Huge budgets.
I think the new management, no one had a vested interest in this show, not least at CBS or the new UPN.
The original people did. Bless you. The original people
they've gone.
We were the first show and the only show that's been on network television. So it was already, the rules had changed. If we'd been on syndicated television, we would have run at least 7 years.
Yeah, I mean,
done. That's done.
You have to look at the history of UPN.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to pitch to UPN. UPN couldn't get a roster of shows. UPN was going down. And there's no place we could move. I mean, to me, what seemed to be the biggest truth is that if the network isn't working, no show on the network is going to survive.
Exactly. We weren't going to go to the Sci-Fi Channel. We were too expensive.
Well, they couldn't even keep Battlestar, for God's sake. I mean,
Yeah, it was the joke we would make around the office is that most people watching UPN needed tinfoil on their antenna on their TV to get it. It's hard to get a big rating when you have 80% coverage around the country or whatever the number was.
And you have no lead in, and you have no. I mean, we were on what's next.
They didn't know what to put
but also,
before
guys,
and after us.
And again, I'm not alleviating any creative misfires on my part, but Star Trek was under fire.
Yeah.
As well, franchise fatigue, whatever phrase you want to use. Look, guys, Gunsmoke was canceled. Yeah. But did Gunsmoke, after however 25 years, how long was it on the air? Yeah. We collectively, Star Trek remained on the 18 years, but collectively, I don't know how many years. Do you?
I don't.
How many?
Then you've
27. Okay, if you count up all the seasons, it's just that Gunsmoke isn't Star Trek. So there's no fanfare like who's to blame that I Love Lucy went off the air. Yeah. Who's to blame that this great franchise? It was also a unique time in that way, and that's what's so fascinating now to watch. What's happening with people rediscovering or just discovering this show.
And you really are trying to appeal to 2 audiences, one that is in it because they're nostalgic and one that's actually wanting to see how the franchise grows and evolves. And that's very, very difficult.
Yeah. And this is a show, guys, just from a writing point of view, the fans know the episodes. You can't repeat the storyline.
No, you can't.
You can't, nor do you want to. And when you're doing 26 a year, and who could even imagine doing 26 episodes of hours of this stuff a year now?
I laud you at the 2 conventions. I mean, it's a feat unparalleled in TV history. It'll never be done again.
I don't think it will. I don't think people are going to be. It's 13 now.
It's amazing.
Even on network.
When they did 30-some episodes of Bonanza,
I know.
Took 3 weeks off, you see when, this is apropos of nothing, but when Fred McMurray died, did you read his obit? When Fred McMurray died, it said that when they shot My Three Sons, they would have to have all the episodes written. They would shoot Fred McMurray out in the first month and a half because he still wanted to maintain his movie career.
Uncle Charlie?
Can you imagine having all the episodes written to begin with, and finished because they couldn't? I mean,
And just shoot
they
his
shot
stuff.
him out.
It's like a BBC series, for heaven's sake.
Television. It's incredible. Another world.
We're going to do 6 this year.
Scott wanted to do that. He just wanted
No,
to
but
do
you know
that.
what, guys? I got to tell you, there were times when I was like in the middle of the night, still in the office, thinking to myself, well, of course The Sopranos is a great show. They have 2 years to make 13 episodes. We're cranking out 26 in a few months. This is madness. But there was nothing, they wanted that quota. I mean, it was a business model that had worked before. Yeah. But I really think if we had done less episodes, we would have been better off.
Well, I think it would have helped. Yeah, I think it would have helped.
What were you shooting for?
I'm quite happy with the 98, thank God.
Well,
no,
I mean
we'd get there eventually. You know?
Yeah, but no, we ended up with 22. I think we were the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and I was pushing for that, but you know, just for everybody to have a break. But you know, yeah.
Did you keep anything from the show? What did you guys all?
I have my suits. I have my ears.
Do you?
I have relics that we collected from the sand desert crossing. I have all kinds of stuff.
I got my boots.
I have a pair of Connor's underwear. My wife likes me to wear them periodically. But
The red ones?
no, the blue ones.
The blue ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we play Connor Trenier and
take
never.
anything?
It's just
I didn't get to take anything. My joke about that is I was like, could I please take a couple of uniforms? And Bob was like, no, you can't.
Yeah, I had to steal mine.
Yeah, I know. But see, I don't know. I kept thinking that was like a myth that then they'd be in,
released it.
I'd get in my car the last night and there'd be like a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff in there, right?
My last day, knock on my trailer.
You have antennas, don't you?
I do not have antennas.
Tell us.
Robert Blackman, bless him. Bless him. I've known Robert since
Costume designer.
I was 18 years old. I've known Bob Blackman.
72 years.
He handed me Schranz boots.
Nice.
So I have Schranz boots. That's all I have.
I have the wardrobe, well, because we were never out of uniform, so the stuff that was tailored for me, they gave to me later. And
Did you take anything?
I didn't take anything.
I was in line. A guy came up to me and said, will you sign this suit? And I was like,
That looks familiar.
man, that looks, he says, well, yeah, it's yours.
Really?
Seriously,
There's
in
one
England.
girl bought
In
4
England,
of
he
mine.
had it, and I opened it up, and it was
Serious
my
money.
jacket, my whole suit. I said,
Who sold it
he
to
said,
him?
I can get. He says to me, I can get you one if you want it. I'm not kidding you, and he meant it too. And I was like,
And they had the big
that
auction.
doesn't
They
seem
made-
right.
that's not
They made
right.
tens of millions of dollars in a weekend.
They sell our stuff.
There's a guy in
Our
Texas
suits
who
were
owns all of my
for
wardrobe.
thousands.
Really?
Yeah, I met him at a
Yeah.
convention.
Big shout out to Jules.
Actually got
She's
creeped
got
me
4
out.
of my suits, and she paid some serious.
Oh, Jules, hey girl.
Hey, girl.
I saw 4 of our outfits on display out of the closet in Burbank.
Really?
Out of the closet?
Out of the closet, full mannequined up.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I've got
Hey,
one
speaking of
uniform.
costumes, yeah, you go ahead.
No,
Go
I've
ahead.
got one.
I
I've
have a
got one
question.
uniform.
Oh, no,
I've
it's
got
a wrap.
my regular
It's a wrap.
clothes
It's a
and
wrap.
one
In
uniform.
Burbank.
I didn't steal it.
Really?
Yeah.
Recently you saw this?
No, recently after the show was
Oh yeah,
canceled.
yeah. That's a whole new thing now. People are like, the studio does an auction.
Oh, they can't, honestly.
Right after.
I mean, well, did you see that one of
Phaser rifle.
Bill Shatner's guns went for $231,000 over the weekend?
You know what I got from the show? Captain's Ready Room, the Enterprise plaque with the different enterprises I took.
I did. I got designs from Mr. Akuda. I
Oh.
did. I framed him and gave him to my
You
family.
named his name now. He's going to go to jail. Right. He'll never work on that lot
No,
again.
this is before we were canceled, so
okay.
he's safe.
That was your Christmas present to us the first season. He freeze-framed our names on the
Yes.
credits and had it framed.
Awesome.
And then he gave us red
God bless you,
sneakers.
sir.
You were always very, very generous. I
I
loved your
never
present.
gave you red
You
sneakers.
totally gave me red sneakers. Red
I
high
gave
top.
you red
You
sneakers.
gave
I
me
gave
a freaking crash helmet.
Yes.
You gave me
Why?
You gave me a
For life.
snowboarding helmet.
For life.
I used that helmet. I learned to snowboard in that helmet, man.
Yes.
God bless.
So the gifts
life.
actually were more pointed than I realized. So
Yes.
I got the red sneakers to symbolize.
Well, he knew you were never going
John.
to go snowboarding, John.
Look around the room. Who needs to be in red sneakers?
Definitely you.
I turn to the crowd. Is this, those of you who are watching, is this a preposterous statement? Do I need to be in red sneakers?
You used to wear high.
You spanked me one night.
Look, if you don't want them, I'll have them.
I did.
You did spank me.
My blue snowboarding helmet and those red sneakers, I'll cut to.
My wife wouldn't let me wear them. She said you were not going out.
You're too busy in all Connor's stuff.
Just the underwear and
Just the underwear, not the sneakers.
Connor's underwear.
Just a rainbow of color.
That's right. We played the decontamination chamber game at our home.
Here's a question, which is where I was about to go, actually.
Decontamination.
That was a question.
So there's no separate facilities in the future. That
Jolene
was
was always
the thing
smuggling raisins in those scenes.
interested me. Oh yeah, Palm Far. Really? I couldn't help her out of her misery?
The best is when the camera's panning from, I think it was Connor to me to Hoshi and then to Porthos. Do you remember that?
Was he all gelled up?
Is this really happening?
There's a dog in it.
Yeah, there was a dog in it.
A ménage à dog.
I think I might have been in that chamber, actually, because
Oh,
the
it
dog,
was
it was my dog.
I think it was the two of us and Porthos.
And the dog.
One bloke came up to the mic in Vegas with me and Connor on stage and asked Connor if he remembered what happened to his Starfleet knickers in so-and-so scene in episode. And no. And I went, well, I'm kind of curious. He goes, because I'm wearing them. Sure as got his ass up on stage and dropped trow, and there they were.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I signed the back.
So question, Brandon, the decon scene, because that put a sexuality into the franchise that was not explored before, how hard was that for you guys to actually get that in there?
It wasn't, well, it wasn't
No
hard at all.
pun intended, I swear to you, I
apologize
wasn't.
about the decon scene. I would apologize to Connor too if you're here. It wasn't, when we wrote it, it wasn't in our heads this big deal. It was just something that we thought would be kind of sexy and contemporary. And it became this thing. And it was actually pretty saucy, even by today's standards.
Yes.
But, you know, Star Trek, at least in the way I see it, has had a long tradition of being a sexual show. You know, by today, Captain Kirk would be called a sex addict. He's like, this guy was,
chiffon-clad ladies.
But it was not meant. And you may have noticed we didn't really use it a lot because I think the reaction to it wasn't all that great. People thought it was gratuitous, and it was.
You didn't use a shot of me like looking through the little peephole.
No.
You know, one thing this show.
If you get the squawking in as well.
The squawking. James Conway totally shot me down. The squawking thing, you don't remember
Day
this?
one.
I
What are you
asked
talking
you
about?
at the read-through, when we did the read-through, and I kind of was like doing a little squawking, and I said afterwards, I said, so the squawking, did you hire me because of or in spite of? What's with the squawking? And you and, I've always remembered this, you and Rick both went,
I'll tell you.
He got to day one shooting though, so he gets to do. I was there. standing
I remember that.
He starts his scene. He gets to the point where Phlox is all excited about something, and that's when he would. And Jim Conway you were just in this cut, god damn. And he comes around from Video Village and he stands right up. He goes, "Are you shitting me?"
But it ended up on camera, didn't it?
no, totally didn't. No, the squawking was cut. I've changed the story somewhat to quit f***ing around, but yes, James Conway and
But
I
you know
tell
what?
the
Let
same
me tell you
story.
something. The squawking, I don't know if the people watching this know what the hell we're talking about, but it's in one of your first scenes. You make a bird
I
sound.
would hazard a guess that they do.
Yeah, you're probably. You're probably. But the squawking is what I remember most about your audition, and I'm sad that it's not on the. I'm very sad. I'm very sad about
No,
that.
that's my wife bet me. She said that's not going to make it.
We got to squawk later on, though, when we turned into those.
Oh, that's right.
Who else?
Oh God! Please don't bring up that episode. There's some dark memories here.
When we became those kind of birds, remember?
That's one of that. I'm going to tell you right now.
When we got the virus.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's one of
Were
them.
we lizards?
That's one of them.
We didn't look well, love. Was all I remember.
Birds? I thought we were lizards.
We were we were kind of birdy, lizardy kind of things, and we made
That
up.
was
We
the
had
problem with the episode.
That the contacts.
Exactly.
I think that was the one time I had to wear contacts.
you had to wear contacts, and it was
It
crazy.
was a rough week.
Poor baby. That was my favorite thing when Connor ended up on. What did Connor ended up on what's that sci-fi show where they go through the portal? Stargate. Yeah.
God knows how I know that.
I know. He ended up on Stargate wearing alien makeup, and I used to love. Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah. He was always so flip when I was in the makeup chair.
Yes, yes, you all were.
It was tough. Well, I went as a melonhead one week, and that was miserable, man. What were they called?
The Suliban.
The Suliban. Thank you.
Yes, I don't remember you. I thought you handled that very well.
Oh no, I.
Honestly, at the end, every night when you have to take this off, and it was like 7 pieces with a big skull cap, and
Should we get our
I sweat
violins
quite
out?
easy, but it would literally just be a waterfall would come down the side of me.
So sad.
I'd look in the mirror at 3 in the morning, and I'd these.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So bad. Really feel for you.
So, what was your least favorite episode?
Well, the one where he turned into animals was pretty bad. And was that in season 3?
I don't remember.
I feel like it was 3.
What was your least
I
favorite?
love those 3 guest actors on that show.
No, that was, you know what, that was a
Remember
bad.
them? They were
that was bad.
fantastic. I bumped into a couple of those along the way.
I didn't like the one where you go on vacation.
Oh, Riza.
I didn't think that was pretty awful.
Let's talk about episodes we did like.
Night in
Sick Bay, right here.
Yeah. I rarely have
the 3 of us?
No, this was the captain's dog was sick.
Oh.
And it was a whimsical episode, and I'm not sure the fans were entirely
Can
down
I
with
tell you,
all
I
the
wrote that
whimsy.
episode. And
People love that episode.
Well, I got to tell you, I remember I loved it. I thought you guys were great. That and Shuttlepod 1 are 2 of my favorites.
That was a great one.
And I think it's unique to Enterprise. I don't think any of the other shows really said, we're going to take 2 characters, we're going to stick them in a room and see what happens. Maybe they did, but
the elevator show.
Yeah. But anyway, it was to save money. We were way over budget, and I thought the episode was hilarious. I thought it was great, but when it came out, it was vilified because they were just like, this is stupid. But it turned out great.
So I don't.
Well, I think
could
maybe
care less about
opinions
that.
have changed.
Was that true though?
It was a love-hate.
People didn't like it?
It was a love.
Why
Why?
don't
'Cause the
people?
dog was floating or
You
something?
answer
They
the
didn't like the
question.
dog?
Why didn't they like it?
Because a lot of people, I talked to folks at the convention about that, and you never know whether you're getting the true skinny from people, but I found that to be a love-hate episode. What people didn't like about it, some people, was they felt it made the captain seem weak, which I thought was silly. But that was also people's reaction to the dogs.
They didn't like the dog, so
You know?
that's just an extension of that.
To me, and what I always say is, you go back to the original series, and Star Trek had whimsy. There were some of my favorite episodes.
Penchant for European water polo.
What I liked about the show, and some of my favorite things about the show had to do with the fact that it had a sense of humor, and that we could find a sense of humor. I loved little things like that. I wish we'd gotten to keep going because
Season 4, there was a lot more of that.
well, there's more. Some of it is what we find.
Well, you
as
guys
actors.
were good. You were good at comedy, actually. With all due respect, Next Generation's cast, they just weren't. I don't think that's a real funny show. There were funny moments, usually involving Data, but you guys were just more natural.
Funny moments with Connor.
Oh yeah. No. I'm saying that you guys were just a funnier cast.
Connor
I
being
think.
pregnant. I mean, there was
Yeah.
there was a lot of comedy in the show that I thought was woven in very well and very honestly. I mean, that was one of the things that I thought.
And the
really-
character development lent itself to characters being made, fun of.
But I do think that was sort of a love-hate thing with fans. I think there were sometimes I think the comic or the antic element in Star Trek, because maybe some fans were expecting it to be, more duked
Star
up.
Trek is many things to many people, and
Yeah.
it's hard to satisfy all the
Here's
expectations.
one, if it had been offset against some grittier drama between us that really meant something, and that's when it really could have come into its own.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
That's probably true. I'm very curious if there's an episode that you felt really satisfied with. That you
I
can
had
look
a lot
back
of
and
them. I liked the 2-parter in the last season, which was just when we were all
The Mirror Darkly.
in the Mirror Darkly. I just thought that was a blast, just for
Do you
because
remember
we all
it was
got
right
to
in the
just-
middle of that we got the news that it was done.
Yeah, but I love that one. I love Sim Trip was a great one. I love
Sim Trip.
Sim Trip, that's what it was called.
Cloned
Trip.
Similitude. Yeah.
The one where I call it Sim Trip. The one where
That was
we
a nice
were, We
episode,
were
yeah.
living on the in the future.
I like that one a lot.
You
Oh,
had
yeah.
amnesia or I had
That
amnesia?
was great.
I had amnesia.
I was nursing you.
You had memento disease.
Yeah, that was a
That
great.
was a good
That
one.
was a
I
really
forgot
great
about
one.
that one.
Yeah,
I like
we
that
had a
one.
bunch. We had Jeff.
I liked
and I had-
Borderland. I thought that was good.
you know, listen, you have to find stuff in every episode because every episode isn't
Well, you can.
great.
There's not a television, on network television. You know, you're doing 22 episodes. Go and watch every episode of any show. I mean, you know, there are good ones, there are less good ones.
Yeah.
And you're right. There are moments in every show. That's what makes you a fan of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to be gracious about that.
Yeah.
You know?
And invariably, you know, they have 3 good ones to get going, and then they didn't know they were going to get picked up for 20 more.
Yeah.
Well, we're
And
the
you
same
have a
way
sort
with
of
actors,
swathe
right?
of 10
I
of them
mean,
are like, whatever.
We all do the same thing. You know, we go back, and I'm sure there are episodes, I know there are for me, there are episodes that are easier for me to watch. It has nothing to do with writing. It's just like, that I hit, that I didn't quite hit. That one was working. I wish I'd had another, you know, whack at that pinata. That's just being human.
You guys, so you guys have actually watched the show. No, I'm not saying that to be funny. I
think they're maybe remembering making it.
Well, no. But what I'm saying is like something that happened. One thing that I didn't like. I loved. Everybody knows me. All the fans know that I stay positive about it because it really was an amazing experience for me. When Travis went home and my father died, I didn't like that you didn't get to see him emote, because I remember a take that Scott and I did that I just let it go, and everybody was moved. Scott was, I was, there was not a dry eye, did not make the cut. And when I went into, because I had to do ADR for that, I'll never forget, they told me the day I went in, Anthony, we just wanted to show you what it was that we wanted, but this was not the cut that they wanted. And I was told that it was because in Starfleet, you can't be that emotional. And I said, well, but he's human, and he found out that his dad had died. So regardless, if you're saying he's in the sweet spot, he's in his world by himself, you just found out your dad died. I don't care if you're the president. If you found out that your parent is gone, you're gonna deal with that. So for me, I just wanted to see more of that. And I didn't know if those were like constraints you guys
First of all, not to lay blame, but Rick Berman he was basically cut the show. I mean, he watched all the cuts. He was heavily involved in post. It would have been his decision, probably, or maybe it never made it to him past the editing. And that's tragic because that's what this show was supposed to be.
Right.
Could be
were
that
those
the flashing
moments.
lights weren't in sync.
Indeed.
No.
But no, I mean, that's terrible, you know.
That's always a tricky, you know, if you're an actor, I mean, that's we've all had that experience of seeing something and going, that's the take?
That's the one that went
absolutely.
with.
You know,
Or that's the cut. Why
And
they cut
because,
there?
but that was my point to it. Because of that, I just felt like, okay, there are things that I'm going to be able to control as an actor. There are going to be things that I won't be able to. So just go, give everything you have, and let it go. I haven't seen an episode of our series since the 2nd season. I never watched 3, I never watched 4, and I felt that we found our space legs by season 3, by 4 definitely. So as a fan of sci-fi, I'm going to, but I felt like I had to remove myself enough so that I wouldn't look at it and get mad and go, damn it, I know I could have done, you know, exactly what you were saying. I had a better one in me. We had a better one that we got. So I was just wondering if you guys actually have watched the show over the years, like my castmates, if you guys have.
No, I haven't seen it.
No.
I've seen bits and pieces.
I've seen it a little bit.
Gotcha, okay.
I've seen a little bit. As much as anything else, just because, you know, I think there was some lovely stuff in it, and if I go back and redo my reel, sometimes I'll kind of riff through thinking, well, maybe I'll change out the Enterprise clip. So I'll go and watch a little bit, and frankly, I'll go watch and I'll kind of get, you know,
Pulled in
a little. It's like, you know, oh yeah. And I have to say, I have had the reaction of kind of thinking, episodes that I wasn't all that wild about when we shot them, I feel warmer towards seeing them again. I mean, there is something about stepping back from being in the maelstrom of it. And you realize how much of what you were feeling at the time had to do not with the quality of the episode like there's an objective reality, but where you were in the process, you know? Whether you were feeling like you were kind of like being used, or you had a handle on something, or, you know, it's so subjective.
Actor shit.
Yeah, actor shit.
I'm from a totally different place than most of you because you had the arc. You had like, okay, next script. I'm sort of like the new kid kid in school. Every time, just when I started feeling like I got a rhythm, you know, go home. And I wish that I had had more of a flow.
Yeah, but you were great on the show. And like I said, we wanted...
But it's nerve-wracking when you come in and
Yeah.
I was welcomed and all of that, but it's still first day of school every time. And it's
Well,
like...
most of the time you really weren't prepared.
never
You weren't
had to
very
wear
good.
yeah.
So
Thank you,
that was
Scott.
part of the
That's
problem.
part
because
of
you
it.
just, you know,
And then
you
you had to
got
build
there.
new sets.
The cellophane on your toilet seat, I was totally opposed to that, by the way. That was pretty much Dominic's
I did
idea.
that to Connor.
Yeah, did you?
What was that? I missed all that. What did you do?
You were quite the prankster.
You were.
It's very much the prankster.
You spanked me.
Well, yes, I did,
I
but
don't doubt that.
I wouldn't call that a prank so much as...
Well, it was kind of an inconvenient Friday, 1 o'clock in the morning, let's get this puppy done. And the director set up a 3-shot with me in the foreground with a cut-off antenna, and you were kind of in a position that didn't look quite right when it was looked at through the camera. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah, vaguely.
And then you
yeah,
took
yeah.
advantage of it and actually slapped my butt.
You act like you've never had your butt slapped before,
Right.
Jeff. We all know
Today.
that.
Not by you. And we all fell apart. It took
we-
30 minutes longer because of that.
We would see the bloopers every year. You
Oh.
know, there'd be a little blooper reel, and
have
you
blooper
you
reels on
were
this?
very
We have
prominently
blooper reels.
featured
We do.
every
Yeah, what? Because
doing.
I know. I would chew up gum and stick M&Ms in it and stick it under the wardrobe's
yeah, you were.
chair so that when they sat down, just I was good at it.
I know, and no one would. And you were
good at
always so
being bad.
demure that nobody would have thought, oh, that wouldn't have been
No.
Jolene.
No.
I knew.
So guys, a final question. It's been 10 years. Has it been 10 years?
No.
8 years. 8
It just
years.
feels like
Okay.
that.
It's been 8 since we
It's been a
ran
long
it.
time. since
And
both
it's
this-
been 10 since its inception.
Is that the first line of our song? It's been a long time. Well, first of all,
Oh, that's a good question.
yeah. Why are we not talking about the song? Because I don't want to talk about it.
Linda's ready to sing it,
What,
though.
does anybody here like the theme song to our show?
I think
Yes.
despite its slow tempo, I think despite your preference for genre, the word, I understand why it was chosen is because of the words, but the backup singers and the, it was the first time was great, but then
It starts to become grating.
it was
I'll Be There For You did pretty damn well.
When, it was when UPN actually put the tambourine in to try and
made
make
it
it
like a
upbeat.
country.
That was when it was like that.
But the credits for Through a Mirror Darkly, that was brilliant.
Well, that was brilliant.
Well,
That was good.
hang on, what was that?
Well, it was like the credits for the show if it had been the dark show. It was all,
the song was
that
awesome.
was great.
Yeah, that was actually
Connor was
brilliant.
Captain Hook.
Well, it's just like, it was about war and brutality and horror, and I love that. Not that I'm like that. Arr.
Do you remember Connor?
Pirate.
So what?
John.
Final question, guys. After enough time has passed, you look back. What's one thing you kind of took away from the show when you think about it?
I feel like I was fortunate enough to be a part of something that touched the world with a positive message, and I think it's just as simple as that.
Okay, getting out of here.
I say to Connor often, our experience of having come to this town and try to make it, without those 4 years on that show, would be a very different picture. And my whole...
Good first gig.
God bless.
Yes.
Knocked on a lot of doors to get it, but my word. I remember saying to Scott one time in the EV suit, I think it was in my phone, oh God, give me a good legal show with a nice suit. and he just went,
shoot those courtroom scenes and see how you feel.
Dami, you have no idea. You don't want to do that. And I always remember that, man.
How about you?
Just being a part of it, being a part of this world. It's infectious, and I grew up on the original series, so coming out from Indiana wanting to do it and knowing that I was going to do it somehow, but not knowing how, knowing that this is my life, everybody, including everybody watching, this is my life for the rest of this journey it's just, it's something that it's indescribable, honestly.
Billingsley?
Well, Joe already said it, but from an actor's point of view, you spend years and years doing theater, and maybe 6 people see you. I mean, you do a show like this, and the rest of your life, wherever you go, somebody's stopping you and saying, "Hey, oh man, that was so great." And it's funny because you do television, and sometimes you have a tendency, I feel this way, to feel like, I'm an actor on TV. When actually people stop you and say, I come home after a long day's work, and it's so gratifying to actually sit and watch something that I enjoy, that means something to me, I look forward to it. It actually kind of, in a weird way, validates some of the choices you've made in your life. And being on a show that runs for a while does that trebly so. So, this is I've had some other shows, but this is the one that ran the longest and the one that I have the closest association with.
And you probably always will.
And you always will,
Always.
yeah.
Jeffrey?
Well, I don't want to embarrass you, Scott.
Oh my
I've said
goodness.
this to you. I've said this to you personally, but the thing that struck me most about this whole wonderful experience on Enterprise was watching Scott lead, operate. I have never seen anyone who was the lead in a show exemplify the finest example of that position. Scott was, in the most generous way, aware of every aspect, cared deeply about what we were doing, and was knowledgeable and took care of everybody. I don't know how many times there was a close-up and Scott would go, "Wait, there's a thing right there. You might want to get that." And at the end of a very long day, this was what really struck me with Scott, was that he had a family at home, he was tired, and he would go around to every single crew member and say goodnight and see you tomorrow. And that's what I took away from the show. If there's ever an example of how to do it, that's it.
Okay. Especially the guy crafting. It's a callback, Jeffrey.
Twice.
We
did. Yeah,
Just to
made the loop.
reiterate, we did a
I
convention
mean it,
just
Scott.
recently in.
Thanks, Jeff.
In was it? Where was it? Just anyway, a few weeks ago.
And that's above and beyond
A young
your work
actor
in front of the camera.
came up to me. He was now the #1 on his call sheet for one of these supernatural shows, and he said, "I don't know if you remember me, but I was on the 3rd season in the Xindi arc, and I did a few episodes."
There you go.
And he said, "I just want to say thanks to you guys, and particularly Scott." He said, "Because you kind of showed me how to do it right." And he said, "I'm hoping I'm taking that on my show right now." And it was a real
Nice. Cool. There you are.
Cool.
Linda, can you top that?
And I feel like Jeffrey's ready to cry now. So no, I'm gonna jump on both what Joe and John said and what Jeffrey and Anthony said. It was talked about my first job out of the gate, and Scott and this whole experience, everybody was a kind of, I've talked about it, like a grad school for me, right? And so I just soaked up as much knowledge as I could, and I really am so grateful for those 4 years, having in a safe environment, taught me how to be on a set, not only technically, but by making a lot of mistakes too, by making a lot of mistakes and getting scared, feeling like, I'm a big F up or whatever it is, but I learned with people who weren't punishing me but wanted to help me grow and mature and be better. And Scott also, even in my personal life, gave me like lots of advice, and I really felt like I became a young woman on this show. I was a kid when I started, and it gave me a toolkit that every show that I've gone on to do beyond that, I came on very confident and knowing not only what I was doing, but having an understanding of how to treat people and how to be with people and how to understand how to be there for your other actors, and kind of a code of behavior that's just like when a kid is raised well in a good household, they go out into the world and they're polite and they are compassionate, and that's something that is so invaluable that I should have been paying money to get that training, right? That training, but I got it for free, and also my grandkids, my great-great-grandchildren are gonna have this legacy. You know, it may sound like a kind of not a silly thing, but I'm part of an iconic American, it's like American royalty. And it's something that is you know, it's something that is going to be around for centuries and centuries and centuries. People will look back, and it's going to be in the pop culture history books, and I'm a part of that.
You're a pop icon.
I'm a pop icon, and all my,
and in recent years, it's cemented itself in the sort of coolness of that pop iconery, if you will.
Our obituaries are written.
Well, because sci-fi
even
is
if you
cool
cure
now.
cancer, it's going to be second. Star Trek actor cured cancer, dies.
That's true.
But it really was for
Why
the
I'm not
most
bothering.
beautiful, fantastically friendly, and I think often of it lately in the last few years.
And Scott, you finally.
I just want to say something we haven't talked about that I have always been struck with, and I would think would be, and I wasn't as aware of it when we started as how it might affect everybody else in the room, but the people behind the camera were and are innovators, creators, the tops in their fields. I mean, you look back and you look at the Blu-ray stuff and the work that's been done, the technical stuff that we were held up with, from you know, Michael, the Westmores and Bob Blackman and Herman Zimmerman and Dan, and you know that, I mean, it just the Okudas who are in the room, not just because they're here, but I mean, we were surrounded by this unbelievable
Support system.
Yeah, but the top people in the industry were working for us. And when you look back at episodes, when you look back at stuff, Anthony, if you do, you'll be amazed at the work around us, you know. And into that, you walked early stuff, first stuff, and you know, I mean, think about that set that we worked on.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Nobody builds a set like that anymore unless you're doing a huge, huge feature. And we had that every day at our disposal. So, that was a great part of the experience that I was like, wow, it was cool in the beginning. And then you're like, wait a minute, those people are the founding fathers of this side of our industry, which I'm a sci-fi guy, and I've done a lot of sci-fi, and
they'd been around on the other shows, so
right.
They kind of had perfected their craft at making Star Trek, and I think Enterprise was truly their crowning achievement.
Scott said this earlier, and I think it gets back to something you said about wanting that last episode to be a Valentine. You know, you felt a little bit like a guest in a way on that show, because you had these guys who were there for 15 years, whose professional careers, you know, were sort of tied up in the work they'd done over the arc of so many seasons.
There was a kernel of them.
Yeah, you really did feel like you were taken in to a family when you joined that show. What a lovely, lovely group of people.
And that's the point. They weren't like, hurry, you guys get with it. Hurry, we're waiting, because you guys don't, you know, this is how we do it. We've been doing it for 15, 20 years. It was like, let's teach you guys, and we'll help you, and and they did it all with such great spirit. Might as well say something about Jerry Fleck. Speaking of great spirits, you know. But you know what I mean? We had that kind of, we were embraced by that group, and whoever and you're responsible for accumulating all those people, and I just, and then casting this group to play with, and you know, it was 12 minutes from my house downhill.
Yeah, God bless.
You make such an excellent point, you know, and you know Jimmy Meese passed away.
I did not know that. How recently was that?
Like 3 weeks ago.
I did not know that.
He was our set decorator. Jerry Fleck was our first AD, and the names on the screen that you see every week on the show are the people you're talking about, and they don't do Star Trek conventions, and they don't do round table behind the scenes. So I'm really glad that you mentioned them.
They worked their tails off, because we showed up and they put us in clothes, but you know, hair and makeup and wigs and
one of the suckier things that's happened in television. So when we were growing up, the credits the crawl.
geez.
You know, you get to see. I mean, I remember watching TV thinking, oh, that's what that is. That's what that department is, you know?
Can hardly
Now
see it now.
it's zip.
And
You know?
it usually goes to the side now
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. That's a damn shame.
Well, not on
If everybody writes a
There's
letter,
some extras about some of the people Scott's talking about, man.
He's already
Have you?
done. He's
Okay.
done some
Yeah,
already.
you're right. You're
done
absolutely
some,
right.
Talking of stuff I got from the set, Jimmy Mees gave me. There was one episode when he decorated it with huge pieces of quartz crystal.
I have some.
I got a couple of nice pieces in the sitting room
I'm
from
the only
Jimmy.
guy who drove out with an empty trunk for 4 years. You know, Linda too.
Oh yeah.
No,
Thank
but
you,
I mean,
Jimmy.
you know, that's the gift of it too, because we were wrapped up in that world, and you guys were all midstream and going fast, and we were like, okay,
We'll catch up. We'll catch up.
you know, because you say, you know, what was that first day like? And it was like, well, people say, what was that first day like? I said, well, I can remember there being a couple hundred people on the other side of the camera. Everybody came down to watch
They
us.
did, didn't they?
The first shot.
Yeah, that was me.
And
Dare I say it?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, and it was important to the whole lot, and it was. I mean, that Star Trek to this day is a cash cow for Paramount.
Yeah.
But there were people from our whole group that had been there for 14 or 15 years. They didn't have to come down and watch us sit in a chair for the first time, or you know, do our first shake and all that stuff that we were horrible at.
1 or a 7.
Well, I went into the auditions.
No names on location. Yeah. But that was remarkable, and you know, and I'm also, the thing that I carry with me is that I think we're all experiencing is the appreciation that the show is getting, the legs that the show has, in a positive way, you know, and I think that speaks to everybody's work in front of and behind the camera, and the writers.
This is a bittersweet moment for me because, as you said at the start, we will probably never be in a room like this again, or I hope that we are.
I hope so too.
Dinner party at your house?
Your house.
My house. But I thank each and every one of you for making this happen. Really appreciate
Thanks for
it.
inviting us. Thank you, Roger, for doing all this stuff.
Yeah, Roger.
CBS and all that good stuff.